Good morning. Good morning. I've made a few failed attempts at videos. I accidentally deleted some, and then I don't know, I got cut off, and I was in the middle of a thought, and I wasn't really totally sure what I was saying anyway, so I just kind of let it hang. But maybe this video will be different, and I'll be able to get some stuff out there. This driveway is so narrow. Also, I've moved to a new area, and I'm still kind of getting my bearings, getting into a new rhythm. But my thoughts are kind of all tangled up. My thoughts need a haircut. The other day I wrote a little poem. It goes, "Sure, I'm just taking a leak," he said, "but what a leak," and nods his head. And then another poem called Reversible, which I can't remember, but it was a kind of technical exercise. These words seem stale in my mouth because I already said them in a video that was deleted. So I'm just giving the scantest paraphrase of things. That's all that's needful, perhaps, at the moment. It's a nice day. So it's gray up top, but there's light shimmering on the outer edges through the trees. There's a little wooded tunnel I'm going through. A pothole, I hear it, potholed street. Down to the main artery, through the tunnel, through the esophagus of the city. Basically have to cut through downtown now to get to work. So I have to pass by the toenail clippings of the skyscrapers. So it seems like my discussion with Paul Talk is a little bit at a standstill. Because I don't think I can, maybe later, but right now I can't really. Marshall, notice the military language, it's everywhere in our language, actually, military metaphors. If I can, Marshall, another attack. A fresh assault, salt and pepper, upon the man, the legend, Paul Talk, regarding war, and what I think Girard has to say. I've kind of been argued into a little bit of a corner, I feel like, because my argument essentially has now become arguing for the personal character and fundamental humility with which I believe Girard presents his theory. Not maybe in the first flush of his youth, when he was all excited and in playful swordplay with all the young Heideggerians of the mid-70s and their ridiculous haircuts and clownish dress. But the later, more mature Girard during the Bush and Obama years, who saw his theory to have some bearing on the Islamic crisis. When he was last writing his final book, his magnum opus, it was the last things he has to say are about Islam, or rather, it's a kind of admission that he doesn't quite know what to make of Islam. And I don't know. During all this crisis, I was reading this final chapter of Battling to the End, thinking to myself, the whole Islamic thing seems almost like passé. It's no longer current. ISIS. It seems so yesterday's news. But one of the pertinent things in relation to the West's war with Islam is that their sense of time is not our sense of time. There's more that's longer, I guess. There's a willingness to lie and wait. And so that makes me think that the whole thing isn't really over. It's just during one of those, we've just hit one of those wait periods between crusades. Oh boy. People are really aggressive on these roads. They're really excited about getting to work, I guess. The remaining few of us who have work to go to. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I wanted to talk about systems and just ask the question, like, what it means to have a system. I was thinking of contrasting Girard with Leo Strauss. Not that there's a whole lot to contrast necessarily. And the role that Christianity plays in the intellectual life. Specifically, our understanding of Christ's passion. Because the key thing that Girard does is give a kind of apology for modern ears, you know. He's kind of an apologist for Christianity. He puts himself in dialogue and makes himself convincing to those who might otherwise just ignore Christianity. And I don't know, you could say that is too pandering of an attitude, I guess, or compare him to Jordan Peterson. But Jordan Peterson never, I don't know, he's doing something else. I don't want to get too lost, but he doesn't acknowledge faith one way or the other. He's all about riding that line, that sweet, sweet spot between order and chaos. And actually, I feel like there's more in common in a way between Leo Strauss and Jordan Peterson. Just in that sense, that desire to ride that line. And both of their unwillingnesses to acknowledge Christ. To say that Christ is Lord, Christ is King. No one can say Jesus is Lord without the Holy Spirit. So, whatever that's worth, those musings. And, obviously, I've already said this, but people can have insights, and life is more than the intellectual life. It's fun to intellectualize and to figure things out, but unless you're present, you're breathing in and out, your head is clear, your eyes are open. Unless you're there, you're living your life, you're in life, Unless you do that, none of the intellectual stuff matters. It's all just window dressing, hiding a corpse. Here we go through the toenail clip-ins. Shimmering toenail clip-ins. So, I don't know. Taking the example of just thinking about history and the human race, I often have the sense that the human race as a whole is analogous to a single human being who is getting older, is developing in good and bad ways. So there are advances and there are regressions, just like within an individual life span. There are advances and regressions. That in a person's childhood, often there will be a simple kind of faith that they'll have in God, just because maybe their parent brings them to church and they're just a loving and open child of God. And then as one gets older, there are all kinds of other influences. And temptations and doubts that arise, and ways in which that initial childlike creature of God is coarsened. Because they get puffed up with all of this, all the knowledge that comes, all the Wikipedia pages they ingest with their breakfast cereal. So faith can flicker away. But then, often, faith can come back. You can have a conversion. And the faith that comes back is more mature. It's immune from the kinds of doubts that took it down previously. Right? And it has a more intellectual element now. Because the intellectual onslaught which it had to endure is overcome. It's modeled, in a way, is sort of systematized, you could say. So, which doesn't mean the faith itself ever becomes fully systematized. There's always that nugget of mystery there at the center, emanating its light, diffusing its aroma, and reasserting itself whenever the adult man thinks he can control or direct its movements too exactly. And there can be further losses of faith and the battle lines can move forwards and backwards. And so, just thinking of that as an analogy for history, one might ask, at what stage are we? if you think of history, the entirety of human history as a single human lifespan, where in that lifespan are we? Kind of thought experiment. Where would you place us? And what would be your rationale for placing us where you place us? I would think we are I don't know, I'm tempted to say we're sort of in puberty or something like that. Because we are in this stage where we're somewhere in adolescence where claims of unbelief made themselves felt, and yet the old faith is reasserting itself. And the role I see of somebody like a Girard is not a total, Most people are never going to read Rene Girard and think about faith within those terms, but ideas in general have an uncanny way of being passed on. And so I fundamentally think, I'm convinced that the interplay of ideas at the highest level has great importance. Not necessarily in the lives, as I've already said, of those who engage them, because one can engage ideas in a detached in a way that doesn't really register in one's life, but that in general, as a collective, ideas have a way of making themselves felt, of becoming permanent. It's like layers of ice freezing over each other, or rings of a tree. Ways of thinking, ways of talking, eventually pervade the whole of society, in good and bad ways, I guess, but overall progressing in exactly the way that a human life progresses. I guess that's kind of the main thrust of my thought, that I think history progresses in the same way that a human life progresses. So an individual throughout life may have all kinds of regressions and lapses. But the thing about even those lapses is that one's conscience becomes guiltier. One either becomes better or one becomes guiltier. Because one is given more. You're given more experience, more recognition of how things are. As time goes on, there's just more. Every year, every second, there's more to take in. There's more to assimilate. More is spoken about reality, about God, about all ultimate things. And so you can either take that in and you can be the best, or you can become guiltier because the weight of that which you are denying becomes greater and greater. The force your denial becomes more and more inexcusable. that's sort of the trend that I think leads to the end of history, to the final judgment. Right? We are all judged. That's the trajectory. That it would be kind of, I don't know exactly how the final judgment will play out, or what terms to really use, but I think that something like that will be involved in the general movement. That's just that's what makes sense to me. That's how I see it. It's also a lot like a developing infant, an embryo. So, I don't know. With regard to the whole question of pedophilia, which I guess Rupert brought up, I'll continue. I 99% agree with what you guys are saying. Just to add that I think there is something particularly menacing. I mean, what's the old aphorism? The corruption of the best is the worst. And so if the Catholic Church is the best, then the corruption of it is the worst. And so, although I think that human trafficking and pedophilia happens in all kinds of creepy corners of the world and halls of power, what have you, I think there's something particularly evil about it when it takes place in what is supposed to be the ultimate good. And there are all kinds of speculations one could have around that, which I don't have time for right now, but the Lavender Mafia, right, is alive and well. So there's that. I don't know. I'm trying to tie up loose ends and remember what I talked about in my video that got deleted and my other one that was so befuddled. I think I was just talking to Dr. Asclepius because I too received a diagnosis of bipolar at one point, and I renounce that word. I don't know. It has its use. It's like how Paul talks about left and right. You can't help using certain words, but I wonder if there's a better explanation of it, a more poetic, a more human explanation of such phenomena. But yeah, when I received that diagnosis, it felt like I was in a karate class and I just got pushed to the mainframe. But the 2 years prior that I had spent in studying clinical psychology, and the diagnostic manual had prepared me for that moment. And I swiveled around and I did a bicycle kick, and I sent the psychiatrist's skull flying off of his body. His skull lodged up into a light socket, and sparks started coming out of his mouth and eye holes. So, that's how I dealt with that